Damn, that was a good episode. What did you think, dear listener? What do you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you shortly. Whilst you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place for small content creators. Be sure to support your local small content creator today, it will do them a power of good. Now on with the review. You know, just when you think that this series has reached its emotional climax, just when you think that it can't go any higher than this, it does it again. It goes poor sultry yet again. With the previous episode, I thought that was it. I thought that was going to be our big emotional crescendo for the season. And everything after that point, sure it might be emotional, sure it might be dramatic, but it was never going to be big enough to possibly compete or exceed it. And then this week, we get this week's episode and it's just... wow. I'm just astonished by it on almost every level that I can barely put into words just how much I loved it. This was, yeah, another heavy emotional episode, much like the previous episode was, but this was one that was focused not only on building the emotional stakes, but developing the core story more so. Yeah, the stuff with Endeavour and Shoto has been fantastic to watch, and whilst it has been developing their story, the overall story to do with the League of Villains stuff just has kind of been pushed to the background for quite some time now. But this is an episode that actually went further with it, and in a way which is just, again, possibly a contender for the big emotional crescendo moment of this season. One of my favourite episodes that we've had of this entire show's history. It is truly something else. It is beyond the realms of just being yet another episode and into being one of my favourite superhero moments of the year, if not for all superhero fiction that I've consumed, which, given some of the stuff that I have consumed, is just amazing. It's astounding. Now, this episode, to kind of put a little bit more into the detail of it, is, you know, it starts out with that moment towards the start of the episode where it's a little bit more lighter, a little bit more levity, a little bit more fun. We had that moment towards the start of the episode where it looked like this was going to be another training episode with our extended cast using their powers, having some fun little banter moments, and I was really geared up for that. I was settled down with me porridge in my hand and my cup of tea in the other, just waiting for this big fun episode to take place, and we started to get hints of that. We had that fun little moment with Uraraka and the All Might keychain thing being discovered and the fun little back and forth with that and the emotional bit with that. Then we had the bit with Bakugo almost pulling an ape man on Midoriya and the fun fallout from that. It's all goofy fun stuff, sure, but it's stuff that I wish was in the series a little bit more. It's goofy and silly in a very teenager kind of way, the kind of thing where, yeah, you can remember doing this kind of stuff when you were that age, and it's stuff that I really enjoy seeing, and again, I wish there was more of it. And if there is going to be more of it, I'd like it to be in this format, because it was presented in a very digestible way, in a way which, whilst it was fun, it was never anything that distracted or took away from the emotional core of the episode itself. Now, of course, that's partly due to the fact of just how early into the episode it was. It never had a chance to do it, but it was paced and placed perfectly for me. A nice little opening gambit for what we'd end up going for the rest of the episode itself. A fine opening, sure, a little bit misleading for what we were going to have, but it does create a nice juxtaposition between what is happening with Midoriya and his friends and what happened with Aizawa and his friends in the past. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that there's going to be some kind of history is repeating itself thing, even if I feel that that might have been the intention of it. You know, they're trying to suggest that something similar that happened with Aizawa and his friends might happen with Midoriya. I don't know if that's what they're trying to suggest. I don't know if that's the thing they're going to do. I think that at the end of the day, they're trying to get that thought into our heads to just make us worry more and to create a greater sense of fear within us, because let's be honest, this is a world where some truly horrible things can happen to people. We've seen it many times within this series, and I imagine that we'll see it a few more times in the future, possibly with some of our main cast members, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The main scene, though, the meat of the episode itself, with Aizawa and Present Mic and I forget his name now, the Nomu guy, was just fantastic. I can barely put into words just what I thought how great it was. It was a powerful sequence with just some really heavy moments within it, and again, it's competing for me now with the previous episode as being the emotional highlight for me. just even beyond an emotional highlight, it was a great way in dealing with backstory and exposition and how it delivered it to us. It's much like the interrogation sequence in the first Terminator movie, where we learn more about our characters and the threat that they're facing, but in a way that feels organic. It's not just this big text dump in a scene, it's telling us it all in a way which just feels natural. It feels like it should work with a scene like that. Its delivery, again, feels rather organic, and I think that really works well with it. And this is an episode that shows that you don't need to follow the show don't tell rule, because this is an episode which does tell more often than in shows, but of course it does show stuff as well. I'll discuss a few misgivings with that in a little bit more time, but oh, actually, I've got it written down in my notes now. The kind of problem I have with the episode, beyond the show don't tell thing, which is always a debate itself, and we're not going to go into it now, is that I feel that the problem the episode has is that it just threw everything on us in one go. There's never really been this hint of there being a third person with the whole Aizawa Present Mic thing up until this moment, nor this hint of any kind of darker emotional baggage for any of them. So for all intents and purposes, this is a character that just never existed for us, and there was never any hint of them ever existing. There was never a line about, you gotta be really careful when you're doing your hero activities, you never know what might happen to you. Oh, Mr. Aizawa's not gonna be in today because he has some personal matters to deal with. Nothing like that. It's just something that just gets dumped upon us, and then just by the sheer weight of it being heavy should be the thing that really hits us in the gut. There was no discovery for us as an audience. It was just, oh yeah, we got this guy in and we think it might be a friend. Deal with that as you must. And the truth of the matter is that whilst it is a bit of a bitch as far as the episode itself is concerned, the truth of the matter is that, if we didn't have them knowing ahead of time, how the hell would the episode work? Yeah, it's a bit of a stumbling block, but at the same time, the episode itself wouldn't function. Sure, maybe if this episode was 40 minutes long and you had more of a time to space it out, you could have discovered that and played around with that a little bit more, but the truth of the matter is that it works for a 20-minute animated adventure show. It does as best with the material and time slot as it can do, and it does it in a fantastic way. This is an episode which feels as though it's serving more as a means of emotional release for Present Mic and Aizawa than it really is anything else. We're seeing them express true emotions in ways that we never have done. We're seeing them neither as teachers or as heroes, but as people. People who are dealing with traumas and difficulties that you can relate to, even if, much like the show to Endeavour stuff, you've no personal emotional experience of being in those moments. It is a fantastic episode, one that is delivered pitch perfectly in a way which shows us everything that we need to know in the best possible way. Again, I feel that maybe it could have been better, but that's going to be the case with anything. It could always have been better, and there's always that moment with any kind of criticism where, as a critic, you're trying not to start to talk about what you would have done, for reasons which, I don't really have time to get into, but I think that the episode itself is great, fantastic, and whilst there is that slight little niggling thing of, well, it wasn't really discovery, it was just told to us at the start of the episode almost, it's fine, because what we got then, and just the emotional punch to the gut of it all, just works so well, and I'm just going to start repeating myself here, but I'll just say it's brilliant. It is truly a brilliant episode. I'm going to be frank and honest with you, and you may think I'm a psychopath for suggesting this, but I would have been perfectly fine if the whole exchange with them in the interrogation room was just the big, final, emotional battle of the season. Hell, I'd have been fine if that was the kind of thing that we got for the big final fight in My Hero Academia in general, because it's just so radically different to what you see in superhero fiction, because, let's address the elephant in the room here. More often than not, it's just punch the other guy really, really hard until they fall over, or use maybe some clever little trick to defeat them. It never really goes into a battle of emotions. And a battle of wits, sure. A battle of strength and speed, sure. But never a battle of emotions. And again, I'd be perfectly fine if this had been the big emotional climax of this season. This had been the final battle in the final episode of this season. I'd be fine with that, but I'm just that kind of a person. But what about you, dear listener? What do you think about this week's episode of My Hero Academia? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you shortly, either directly in the comments themselves or towards the end of next week's video. You know, whichever is appropriate. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!